The town rose like a drum beaten too hard. Lights flashed even before the sun slept, music spilled from open doors, and cars moved with pride, raising dust like kings announcing their arrival. Money spoke here. It spoke loudly. It decided who mattered and who did not. Young men measured respect by shoes and watches, and young women measured worth by who noticed them. In this place, wisdom had no seat unless it carried cash. Yet beside this town stood an old village that refused to bow. Its paths were narrow and patient. Tall ancestral trees stretched their arms over cracked earth, and small shrines rested quietly beneath them. The village did not shine, but it remembered. It remembered names long forgotten by the town. It remembered promises, betrayals, and the laws of the ancestors, laws older than money, stronger than pride. Between the two lay the market, alive from dawn to dusk. Voices clashed like drums out of rhythm. Traders shouted prices, coins rang, and laughter burst without warning. But beneath the noise, softer sounds lived. Elders sat on low stools, their eyes watching more than their mouths spoke. They whispered of spirits that walk unnoticed, of curses that wake only when called, of justice that waits patiently. Few listened. Most hurried past. Everyone felt it, though none spoke it clearly, the pull between the new road and the old path. One promised speed and power. The other demanded respect and memory. The land itself seemed to wait, as if holding its breath. The girl was born into the brightest house in the town. Her crib was wrapped in soft cloth, and her cries were answered before they finished forming. Servants ran at the sound of her voice. Desire followed her like a shadow, never told to stop. No one taught her the word, enough. No one taught her how to bow. Her name opened gates. When it was spoken, guards stepped aside and traders smiled too quickly. Teachers lowered their voices. Elders sighed and turned away. With every door opened for her, another rule closed behind her. Arrogance grew where correction should have lived. Her parents watched from a distance. They loved her, but from behind walls of wealth. When she offended someone, money arrived before apologies. When she disrespected an elder, gifts followed instead of discipline. "She is young," her father would say. "She will grow." Her mother nodded, believing comfort could replace guidance. Under the sun, the girl laughed at old ways. She mocked stories of ancestors and spirits. "Show me one," she would say, rolling her eyes. "I only believe what I can touch." When elders spoke, she checked her phone. When rituals were mentioned, she laughed, loud and careless. Her power showed itself most clearly in how she treated those beneath her. A servant once dropped a tray, and she clapped mockingly. "Are your hands asleep?" she asked. A poor woman begged by the roadside, and the girl covered her nose in disgust. Kindness never visited her heart. People whispered when she passed. "She has everything," some said. Others shook their heads. "Yes," an old man murmured, tapping his walking stick into the dirt, "but she has lost something important." The wind shifted that day, though no one noticed. The town kept shining. The village kept watching. And the girl kept laughing, unaware that the ancestors had begun to listen. She sat where the market noise was loudest, yet no one truly saw her. A thin old woman, wrapped in torn cloth, her feet bare against the hot earth. People passed with baskets on their heads and pride in their steps. Coins rang, voices bargained, laughter burst, but she remained still, like a stone the river chose to flow around. To many, she was only part of the dust. When eyes did fall on her, they turned away quickly. Not because she looked dangerous, but because she looked uncomfortable. Her poverty held up a mirror people did not want to face. A woman tugged her child closer and whispered, "Don't stare." A trader frowned and shifted his mat. Shame, not fear, pushed them aside. Yet something moved with the old woman, something unseen. When she slowly rose to adjust her cloth, nearby voices softened. A joke died halfway through laughter. Two men arguing over price suddenly lowered their tones. No one could explain it. They only felt it, a quiet weight pressing on the air. Nature noticed what humans ignored. Chickens that pecked freely fell silent when she passed. A thin wind followed her steps, stirring dust in small circles. Children, who still listened with their hearts, paused their play. One boy tugged his sister's hand and whispered, She feels like night before rain." The girl nodded, eyes wide, though she did not know why. The old woman's eyes were clear. Not weak. Not confused. They carried depth, like wells that remembered every drought. She watched the people, not with anger, but with sadness. Her lips moved once, barely a breath. "So much noise," she murmured, "yet so little listening." No elder announced her. No drum welcomed her. Still, she had been sent. Not by kings or chiefs, but by the ancestors themselves. She was a test wrapped in rags, a question walking on tired feet. Who would see her? Who would honor what she carried? As the sun leaned west, she tapped her walking stick gently on the ground, once, twice. The earth seemed to answer with silence. And in that silence, fate planted its seed, quiet, patient, waiting for pride to step too close. The market was alive like a restless drum. Voices clashed under the hot sun, traders calling prices, buyers boasting of bargains, laughter spilling like water from a broken pot. Gold watches flashed on wrists. Fine clothes brushed past torn sandals. Every eye watched every other eye, measuring worth, judging status, feeding pride. In this place, being seen mattered more than being kind. The girl walked through the crowd as if the ground belonged to her. People stepped aside without being asked. A young trader whispered to his friend, "That is her." The friend nodded, impressed. Coins rang louder when she passed. Smiles appeared quickly, then faded once she was gone. Near the edge of the market, the old woman sat low on the earth. Her hand was stretched out, palm open, trembling slightly, not in fear, but in age. Her voice was soft, almost lost beneath the noise. "Anything small," she said, not looking up. "Anything to carry me through the day." The girl stopped. Her face tightened, as if the air had offended her. She stared at the hand, then at the woman's torn cloth. "Why do you sit here?" she asked sharply. "Can't you see people are busy?" The old woman lifted her eyes. "The sun feeds everyone," she said gently. "Even those who forget." That answer scraped the girl's pride. She scoffed. "Forget." She laughed and turned to the crowd. "Listen to her wisdom. Poverty has made her a philosopher." A few people chuckled. Others shifted uncomfortably. The girl stepped closer, her voice rising. "Look at you," she said. "Old, dirty, smelling of dust. Is this how you beg now, by talking?" The old woman said nothing. Her hand remained open. The girl's laughter grew louder, sharper. She made a show of covering her nose, then did something shameless. Right there, before everyone, she mocked the woman with her body and burst into laughter, pointing as if she had performed a great trick. For a heartbeat, the market froze. Then nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Some laughed because they were afraid not to. Others laughed because cruelty is easier when shared. A woman whispered, "This is too much," and pulled her scarf lower. An elder leaned heavily on his stick, eyes on the ground. Another elder murmured, "This is not good," but said nothing louder. The girl basked in the sound. "See," she said, grinning. "Even the air agrees with me." The old woman slowly lowered her hand. She stood, joints creaking like old wood. She did not shout. She did not curse. She simply looked at the girl. Their eyes met. The girl's laughter stumbled, just for a moment. Something in that gaze did not beg. It did not plead. It weighed. It remembered. It was steady like a river that has seen many storms pass and many foolish feet step too close. Around them, the market noise thinned. A joke died in someone's mouth. A child stopped chewing sugarcane. Even the dust seemed to settle. The old woman spoke softly, not to the girl alone but to the ground beneath them. "When pride dances in the open," she said, "the earth learns its steps." The girl forced a laugh. "Go on," she snapped. "Dance with your earth somewhere else." The old woman nodded once. Then she turned away. She walked slowly through the crowd. Each step felt heavier than the last, though she carried nothing but a stick. As she passed, voices lowered without permission. The air thickened, like the moment before rain breaks. A trader swallowed hard. "Why do I feel cold?" he asked no one. Behind her, The girl laughed again, louder than before, to prove she felt nothing. "Did you see her face?" she said to her friends. "These people think rags can scare me." But the old woman did not answer. She did not look back. No curse followed her steps. No anger stained her silence. And somehow, that silence was louder than any shout. As she disappeared beyond the stalls, a thin wind moved through the market, lifting dust in small circles. An elder finally spoke, voice trembling. "Some warnings are not spoken," he said. "They are felt." The girl waved him off, but the sun dimmed behind a passing cloud. Somewhere, unseen, something ancient had taken note. The air changed first. A cool wind slid through the market where heat had ruled all day. It lifted dust gently, not in anger, but as if searching. Birds that had perched on rooftops suddenly scattered, wings beating fast, voices sharp with warning. Clouds gathered where the sky had been clear, moving slowly, listening. Even the ground seemed to hold still, like an elder waiting for a child to finish speaking. People looked up, confused. "Was rain promised today?" a trader asked. "No," another replied, rubbing his arms. "But my skin feels watched." At the edge of the stalls, the elders leaned closer to one another. Their voices dropped, shaped by fear and memory. "This is what happens," one murmured, "when age is mocked." Another nodded. "Silence is never empty. Spirits speak through it." A third whispered, "The ancestors do not rush, but they never forget." The young did not listen. They were busy laughing. The girl's voice rose above the unease. "Did you see how she walked away?" she said, clapping her hands. "Like smoke chased by wind." Her friends laughed with her, loud and sharp, as if noise could push back what they felt. "If she had power," the girl scoffed, "she would have used it. Silence is weakness." She did not see how people stepped away from her now. She did not feel how the land shifted under her feet. That night, sleep came heavy and strange. She dreamed of the market, but it was rotten. Fruits burst open with worms. Laughter echoed from unseen mouths, loud and cruel, the same laughter she had used. Faces rose from the ground, old faces, cracked and stern, eyes glowing like embers. The old woman stood among them, her mouth closed, her eyes wide and deep. The girl tried to scream, but her voice smelled of decay. She woke with sweat on her neck. "Just a dream," she muttered, forcing a laugh into the dark. But sleep did not welcome her again. In the morning, she stood before her mirror, expecting praise. The mirror gave none. Her face looked the same, yet not the same. Her smile felt borrowed. Her eyes seemed tired, as if they had watched too much in the night. She leaned closer. The mirror felt cold, distant, like it did not know her anymore. "Stupid glass," she snapped, turning away. She dressed in her finest clothes and went out, seeking noise to drown the feeling. Music played. Friends gathered. Food filled the table. She laughed when she was supposed to, but the sound fell flat, even to her own ears. Pleasure slipped through her fingers like water through a cracked pot. "Are you all right?" one friend asked lightly. "I'm perfect," she replied too quickly, raising her voice. "Better than ever." But inside, something had begun to loosen. Not breaking, just shifting. Far away, beneath an ancestral tree, an elder poured a small drink onto the earth. "Justice has stood up," he said softly. "Now it will walk." And the night listened. Her friends began to look at her differently. At first, it was small gestures, a pause before answering, a quick glance at the floor instead of her eyes. Laughter that once followed her jokes now faltered. Invitations grew fewer, excuses more frequent. One by one, they stepped back, though no one spoke of what they feared. "Something is wrong," one whispered to another as they watched her, but the words could not name it. Even in her home, a quiet unease settled. Servants who had once moved with smooth certainty now tripped, dropped dishes, fell sick without cause. Some resigned abruptly, muttering of tired bones and restless spirits. Rooms that once hummed with the soft rhythm of daily life grew silent. Even the dogs refused to bark, and the air seemed heavy with warning. She walked through it all, confused. "Why do they leave?" she demanded one morning. The cook shook her head, whispering, "The earth, the wind, it does not like this." Outside, the world continued, but subtly, the land itself seemed to watch and wait. The wind shifted unexpectedly, and trees creaked as if whispering secrets to one another. This was no sudden storm, no fiery punishment. It was a slow drumbeat, steady and deliberate, a rhythm that spoke of ancestral justice. It did not destroy all at once. It measured pride, examined hearts, and taught patience. Every misstep, every faltering smile, every failed attempt at pleasure was part of its lesson. Money that had once flowed like a river now trickled. Business deals failed without clear reason, profits vanished, and investments that seemed secure crumbled. Her family, once untouchable in the eyes of the town, began to whisper anxiously among themselves. "We've never lost like this before," her father muttered to her mother, pacing the marbled floors. "The books, the accounts, it makes no sense." Long-hidden secrets rose from the shadows. Letters, unpaid debts, unkind words once forgotten, everything seemed to surface at the worst time. A distant relative scandal reached the town square, a minor servant's betrayal became rumor, and whispers spread where fear had once held the community silent. People no longer bowed in awe, they watched, murmured, and waited. Elders approached with soft, measured voices. "There are ways to mend," one said. "You must offer apologies, honor what was mocked, and cleanse the path with humility." They spoke of rituals long practiced, of words spoken to the earth and ancestors, of gestures that carried more weight than gold. Her parents, proud and wealthy, struggled to understand. "We can buy respect," her father insisted, handing coins to a worried neighbor. "We can fix this." The elder shook his head slowly. "Not all power is in your hands," he said. "Some debts cannot be paid with wealth. The ancestors are patient, but they are not blind." For the first time, they realized the truth. Money could not silence what watched from the unseen world. Their daughter's arrogance had called something into motion, an invisible force that measured hearts, not wallets. And now, it was walking, slow but certain, teaching the lesson they had ignored for far too long. The town gathered quietly under the shade of the baobab tree, where the air carried the weight of whispers and secrets. The diviner, an elder whose eyes seemed to see beyond the world of flesh, lifted his staff and spoke. "Listen, all who hear," he said, voice steady. "There are matters the young cannot see, lessons the proud cannot feel." He looked at the girl, who stood among her wealth and servants, her face still tight with disbelief. "The woman you mocked is no ordinary soul," he continued. "She is sent when arrogance poisons the land. When laughter falls upon the weak, when pride blinds hearts, she comes." The girl's eyes widened. "Sent? By whom?" she asked, voice trembling with curiosity and fear. "By those who watch from beyond," the diviner replied. "She is a moral enforcer, not a destroyer. She does not act for revenge. She exposes what is rotten, hidden beneath vanity and wealth, so that truth may be seen." The crowd shifted. Mothers held children closer. Traders folded their arms. The wind whispered through the trees, as if agreeing with the diviner's words. "What must I do?" the girl asked, the first note of humility threading through her voice. "You have only one door open to you," the diviner said. "Humility. Repentance. Restitution. Bow your heart to what you have broken, apologize to those you have mocked, honor the unseen forces, and your path may yet be restored." The girl nodded, though shame pressed on her chest like a heavy drum. Her laughter no longer felt light, her confidence hollow. She understood that pride had drawn the eye of the ancestors, and only a bowed spirit could walk free from their gaze. Then, the world began to shift. Wealth that had once flowed to her as easily as water from a spring began to fade. Doors she had always entered without knock or pause now remained closed. Even her influence, her charm, her very presence, seemed to speak less loudly than before. Respect, once automatic, slipped through her fingers like dust in the wind. Faces that had once bowed in fear or admiration now looked at her plainly, unafraid. Friends who had fed on her joy laughed openly at her misfortune, their loyalty as shallow as the water in a sun-scorched pond. Even her family, who had shielded her with wealth and name, now stepped back. The elders within the household whispered warnings she could no longer ignore. Pride had its cost. Money could not call back respect, charm could not reclaim loyalty, and her name, though powerful, no longer promised immunity. The girl stood amidst the silence, the crowd's murmurs, and the echo of her own hollow laughter. For the first time, she understood. Fortune's drum had fallen silent, and the lessons of humility, repentance, and unseen justice had begun to beat in its place. The girl stumbled through the crowded streets, her stomach tight with hunger, her once flawless clothes torn and dusty. For the first time, she felt the weight of empty hands, the ache of neglect, the sting of cold nights without servants or silk to cushion her. She reached for scraps in the market, and merchants who once bowed now turned away, their eyes hard with judgment. Mothers clutched children to their chests as she passed, whispers following like shadows. She had worn the face of those she once mocked, and it was bitter against her tongue. Laughter began to follow her now, not the polite, nervous laughter she commanded before, but cruel and sharp. Townspeople who had once feared her name now pointed and whispered, turning her misfortune into entertainment. She froze at the edge of the square, hearing a child snicker behind a fruit stall. "Isn't that the girl who laughed at the old woman?" someone murmured. Every eye seemed to mirror her fall, every sneer a reminder that pride had its price. One evening, by the edge of the village where the old trees whispered among themselves, she saw her again. The old woman, frail yet unbowed, sat upon a low rock, a basket at her feet. Their eyes met, and in that gaze there was no anger, only the deep weight of disappointment that pressed harder than any curse could. "You have come far in your journey," the woman said softly, "but not far enough to see what pride blinds you from. You mocked what you did not understand, and yet the law you scorned does not falter." The girl swallowed, trembling. I thought it was just a joke. I did not mean harm," she whispered, voice raw. "Intent does not erase consequence," the old woman said, her tone steady as the river in flood. "The spirits watch the heart. Arrogance poisons the soul. Disrespect to the weak, the aged, the unseen, this is the crime you carry. And it is heavier than any gold you once hoarded." The girl sank to her knees, finally seeing the truth. The sin was never the laughter, the mockery, or the act alone. It was the pride behind it, the heart untouched by humility, the soul blind to justice. Every step she had taken without respect now echoed within her chest, teaching a lesson that no riches could buy. "You must carry this understanding with you," the old woman said, rising to leave. "See the rot that grows where respect is absent. Learn what it is to bow, to mend, and to honor. Only then may you walk forward without shame consuming you." The girl watched her disappear into the twilight, the weight of the lesson sinking deep, leaving her hollow yet awake, ready to face what remained of herself. The girl stood alone at the edge of the village, the path before her split like the river's fork in the rainy season. One road carried bitterness, the familiar comfort of anger, blame, and pride. The other was narrower, shadowed by humility, twisting through the hills of confession and service. Her chest tightened, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the voices of ancestors she had ignored. She closed her eyes and felt the weight of every mocking glance, every careless laugh she had cast at the weak and the old. "I cannot blame fate," she whispered to herself. "It is I who must bear this." She stepped onto the path of truth, letting go of every complaint she had held in her heart. Her shoulders slumped, her gaze lowered. The village elders had gathered in the square, their eyes steady and patient. Trembling, she fell to her knees and spoke aloud, her voice carrying through the warm, dusty air. "I was proud. I laughed at those who deserved respect. I mocked the weak, dishonored the old, and scorned the unseen. I am sorry." A hush fell over the crowd. The sun cast long shadows across the square, and even the birds seemed to pause, waiting. She moved among the poor, the children, and the sick, offering hands that had once waved in scorn. She fed them, cleaned their homes, and carried water from the well. "Please," she said to the women at the market, "I ask for your forgiveness. I expect nothing but will serve as I can." Days turned into nights, and she continued her work without pride, without the thought of reward. Her ego, once swollen with wealth and name, was stripped bare. She felt the layers peel away, leaving only her spirit, trembling but alive, open to the lessons she had ignored for so long. At night, sleep came softer. Dreams that had once roared with rot and mocking laughter now carried calm rivers and quiet fires. The nightmares faded like mist in the morning sun. The village, too, seemed to breathe for the first time in months. Marketplaces hummed gently instead of buzzing with tension. Children laughed freely, elders spoke in calm tones, and the air no longer carried the weight of fear and disapproval. Harmony returned, slowly knitting the threads the girl had once torn apart. By the edge of the square, the old woman appeared, standing as silently as a whisper. She looked at the girl, nodded once, and stepped into the wind. She disappeared into the evening light, leaving no trace but the lesson she had delivered, that pride bows only to humility, and that redemption is a path walked slowly, with hands extended and heart open. The girl watched the wind swallow the figure and felt a quiet peace stir within her chest. For the first time, she understood that true wealth was not gold, not status, but the restoration of honor, the mending of hearts, and the reverence owed to the world seen and unseen. The village square was quiet, the air thick with the scent of earth and incense from the elders' morning fires. One by one, the respected leaders of the community rose, their voices steady and solemn. "The ancestors have spoken," the eldest declared, his eyes sweeping over the girl. "Their gaze has watched her journey. The balance is restored. Justice has walked, and the lesson has been received." A hush fell over the crowd. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if listening. The girl bowed her head, feeling the weight of both judgment and mercy. Relief softened her shoulders, but it was a humble relief, not the arrogance she had once worn like gold. Her days did not fill immediately with wealth or luxury. Instead, small lessons crept into her life, teaching patience. A market favor returned slowly, a neighbor offered trust in time, a servant shared a smile cautiously. Every small kindness became a treasure, more valuable than the gold she had once flaunted. Anger no longer flared within her chest. The laughter that used to mock others was replaced by thoughtfulness. When children stumbled past, she paused to help. When elders spoke, she listened with genuine attention. Where she had once scorned the old ways, she now bowed her head to them, letting their stories sink deep into her mind. Each act of compassion grew from her remembered suffering. The hunger, the fear, the ridicule she had endured now became roots for empathy. She carried plates to the hungry, water to the sick, and words of encouragement to those who had once been invisible in her eyes. At the gatherings, she spoke openly of her past mistakes. "I was proud," she told the young girls and boys. "I laughed at age, poverty, and silence. I mocked what I did not understand. Learn from my heart, so you do not walk my path." In her quiet strength, the town saw not a spoiled child, but a woman who had learned to respect life in every form. Her shame was no longer hidden, it was a lantern, guiding others away from pride, teaching that humility and wisdom are the richest inheritance one can carry. The village gathered as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of gold and red. Around the central fire, elders leaned on their staffs, eyes reflecting both the flames and the weight of memory. The people listened closely, for stories here were not mere entertainment, they were lessons etched into the spirit. "The girl who mocked the old and the poor," the eldest began, voice steady and clear, learned what pride costs. "Mockery may bring laughter, but it carries shadows unseen." Heads nodded solemnly. Even the youngest felt the gravity of the words. A mother whispered to her child, "Remember, little one, never laugh at what time may make you become. The weak of today may rise, and the mighty may fall." The child's eyes widened, understanding the fragile balance of life. An old woman from the crowd added, "The ancestors watch, not with fire, but through eyes we do not expect. What seems humble may hold judgment, and what seems weak may carry wisdom." The story traveled from one fire to the next, from mouth to mouth, through every evening and festival. Children repeated it, elders retold it, and the town remembered. Every market, every road, every home whispered the tale of the girl who learned humility, ensuring the lesson endured far longer than wealth, far longer than laughter. And so, the fire burned on, carrying the story across generations, a tale of pride, consequence, and the quiet, enduring power of respect and wisdom.